So now we're going to look at this lesson plan and how we can adapt it. I don't know if anyone has seen this lesson plan or used it in class. It's one of the hundreds and hundreds of ready lesson plans on the teachingenglish.org.uk website. There are so many there, and of course we can't work through them all, but we can have our favourites and share our favourites with other teachers we're working with. So this one is a picture, a photo, and it's then a listening. So you listen to the photographer talking about why they took the photo, and then you write and talk about what the story is, and it's asking questions and making the story behind the photo. So could you do that lesson just as it stands with your students? Or do you need to adapt it? Let's talk through a couple of little adaptations we could do to give you some ideas on how you can adapt other lessons. First of all, the context. So I've got these 4 bullet points down the right-hand side here. The context. This is a photograph of, I think it's probably the UK, because it's written in English there, and this is traffic lights. I just found out the other day that traffic lights in South Africa are called robots. I didn't know that. So are they called traffic lights in your country when you translate into English? Do you have that box to press to tell pedestrians to wait? So your students might not understand what this context is. You might have to change it or even take another photo. You might have technology restrictions. So can you show a photo in your class on the wall? Maybe you can have it on your phone, and you can have one of those magnifiers, screen magnifiers that magnifies what's on your phone onto the wall of the classroom. Or maybe you can just go around showing the students this photo on your phone. Or maybe you can draw a simple picture of it on the blackboard, or have a picture. Loads of different ways you can adapt just having that photo. And then the topic there, you can see the title is called Tiny Cinderella Somewhere. Now, how many of you know the story of Cinderella? If you put yes in the chat, if you do. I'm imagining quite a few of you know the story of Cinderella. Do you remember when she had ugly stepsisters and stepmother, and she had to do all the housework, and she met the prince, and she left her shoe as she went running away at midnight? Yes, most people are saying yes here. Do you think everyone across the whole of Africa knows this story? I doubt it somehow, because there's always some stories that they have a local version which is more popular, for example, or they don't like that story and nobody's ever told it before. It's vital to this story that you know that reference to understand it. So you might want to have a different cultural reference or story instead. And then the 4th adaptation there is part or all. So you could just show the visual and get people to talk about it. If you have the resources to play the listening, you could play it. Again, play the listening on your phone, and with a box, even just a small cardboard box around the microphone on your phone, you could make the sound louder. Very simple way of making that sound louder. You might just want to play the listening and get them to work out what the story is. Or you might want to do the whole lesson. So please adapt all of these lessons. Don't feel that just because they're British Council resources, you have to take them as they are. Cut them up, take a little bit, question the context, the restrictions, the cultural references, part or all. And you may also need to input some vocabulary, to translate some words, to pre-teach some words, for example. How else can we adapt the resources to suit our learners? I'm sure you've got experience adapting some others. Could you put in the chat now some other ways that you have adapted some of these resources? Maybe think about a plan that you've used and cut. Any ideas for what you've adapted? Another idea, for example, is if it says work in groups of 3, you may have a class of 70 students, and you may decide to work in pairs rather than moving people is easier. Or you may decide working in groups of 5 or 10 is easier. So again, the way we do the classroom management is up to you and your context. Of course, a lot of these lessons are planned in context in Europe, for example, where there is maybe 20 or 30 students in a class, and you might have to adapt them to a far larger one. Okay, so Elsie is saying she's localized the warmer Simon says to never says. Great. That must be somebody in Cameroon. Yeah. So changing names. Brilliant. Okay, rewriting things, yes, Tesfaye, but it takes time. Adapting local stories, great. Okay, differentiating learning by putting people who are having difficulties in specific groups and pairs. This is great ideas. Yes, and Sally, changing the names to local names is really good because it gets the the buy-in of the students there, and they feel more motivated to do it. Excellent. Yes, and teaching vocabulary in context. Oh, the chunk and chew method. Oh, I don't know that one. That sounds interesting. Could you explain a bit more about that in the context, please, in the chat?